Thank you for coming. You can applaud now. We didn't know whether this was going to happen tonight, given the power outage that some of you may have heard about, some of you may have experienced, but we are going to do it, and we're going to begin very shortly. But first, I'd like to introduce the main, but not only, participants. My name is Greg Williams. This is Don Rockwood, who's going to be manning the Mander organ upstairs. Thomas Marcio will be playing the guitar with his mother, Sarah Ford Marcio, who piped us in. Next to Thomas, Joy and Domenico playing shortstop and playing the Celtic harp. Next to her, Jacqueline Schwab. Some of you may have had the good fortune to see Jacqueline Schwab in this meeting house before. She and I have done a couple of programs in here over the years. And she will be playing, what do you play again? Think of something, we got time. Okay, and for introductions, that's it. So unless anybody has any questions, we'll begin. So everybody can disperse at this point. Welcome to Burns Night. Burns Night is an ancient tradition in this meeting house. We started doing this in 2017. This is the 4th annual Burns Night in the meeting house. I think I couldn't hear everything that Nancy Shoemaker told you at the beginning, but construction of this building began in 1717 and was completed in 1719, exactly 40 years before Robert Burns was born. 261 years ago, on January 25th, 1759. Burns's father, whose name was William, spelled his name with an E, B-U-R-N-E-S. And in parts of Scotland, that name is pronounced with 2 syllables, Burness. And Robert Burns himself spelled his name with an E until he was 27 years old. So he may have pronounced it Burness. But we don't know that for sure. Now, Burns's songs and poems are exceedingly accessible, except for the words. But his work and his colorful personality have been celebrated since the first Burns Night, first Burns Supper really, in 1801. That one was held on the 5th anniversary of his death at the humble lime-washed cottage in Alloway, now part of Ayr, in Ayrshire, southwest Scotland. Actually, that's it right there, that old engraving shows it. And there are a couple of other pictures of that cottage, which I visited in 1970, I believe. I think now it's something like a Robert Burns theme park. But back then, that was the house and that was it. That's all you got. But you'll see some pictures of that when it comes up. Anyway, a few years after that first one in 1801, the celebration shifted to his birthday. Celebrations of Robert Burns, Scotland's national poet, traditionally feature music, which you've already heard a little bit of, poetry and talk about Burns, the dreaded haggis, and some actual edible Scots foods, and Scotch whiskey, which in Scotland is not spelled with an E. We present not a traditional formal Burns Night, but rather our impression of Burns Night, our homage to the Scottish bard, the ploughman poet. Again, you've had a taste of the music. There'll be plenty of that to come. You will taste wonderful Scottish foods. I'll do some talking. I wish everyone here could sip some Scotch whiskey, and for all I know, you might be doing that clandestinely out there. I wouldn't know. And I won't ask, but I will do that part too. These are Kleenexes. You may recognize this box, and the reason this is up here is I have a cold, and I also brought it because when we get to the end of this thing and you hear Highland Cathedral, some of you are going to need this as well. You're welcome. Now, this is the 4th year we've done this. I have drunk lukewarm tea up here. I have also drunk 12-year-old Aberfeldy up here. You don't know which is which you don't know. And won't ask, I trust. Now, I thought we'd switch this up a bit this year by taking the first hour and a half of the program to analyze each of the 228 lines of one of Burns's longest poems, which is called Tam O'Shanter. Actually, we won't be doing that. But we can do that if you want. But what I do want to note about that poem is that Edgar Allan Poe, whose birthday was Sunday, listed Tam O'Shanter among a list he had of examples of entire poems of the purest ideality. What the hell does that mean? I don't know. I was hoping somebody here might be able to answer that. I think the real reason he liked it is because it's creepy. And yes, the hat, Tam O'Shanter, is named after that poem. And I'd also commend your glances to our slides every once in a while, because included among the program over there are some pictorial representations of that poem, Tam O'Shanter. That poem tells the story of Tam, who was a guy who has lingered maybe overlong in a pub. And as he rides his horse, Meg, homeward, he stumbles onto a witch's party in a ruined church. Actually, a specific ruined church called Alloway Kirk. And at that party, the devil himself is playing the bagpipes. Tam and Meg end up being chased by a witch who, that's him right there, I believe. But there are some other representations up there. They are chased by a witch, and the object is for Tam and Meg to get across the river, because, as you know, witches cannot cross water. So, you know the rest of the poem. The poem does include lines appropriate to transitory happiness of such gatherings as ours this evening. But pleasures are like poppies spread. You seize the flower, its bloom is shed. Or, like the snow falls in the river, a moment white, then melts forever. Now, before we usher in the haggis, everybody know what haggis is? Grab a sheep, shear off the wool, eat the rest. I promised last year that we would have sheep-free vegetarian haggis this year. We don't. But next year, haggis pizza. Watch for the picture in the slides. Now, before we actually have the haggis piped in here, we do one traditional part of Burns supper, Burns night, and that is the saying of the Selkirk Grace, also known as Burns's Grace at Kirkcudbright. Everybody know how to spell Kirkcudbright? K-I-R-K-C-U-D-B-R-I-G-H-T. It's obvious. And I thought that although normally I deliver this, that it really should be somebody more qualified than I to A, deliver a grace, and B, be named Burns. Christy Burns, come on up. Okay, I think this is on. Go on one. Okay, so you want to hold that. There it is.
Some I meet and cannot eat, and some I meet that want it. But we have meat and we can eat. And say the Lord, be thanked.
Perfect. Perfect. Thanks for volunteering. Now, you might recall that last year, the address to the haggis, the ode to the haggis that Burns wrote, was presented by the two of us, a special guest, an honest St. Columbus Scot, even better, our authentic Hebridean, Margaret O'Brien, and I translate what she says into English. This year, it's all Margaret, all Margaret. So I think that's a vast, plus she even brought her own knife. So that's what it is, and take it away, Margaret.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure tonight to recite to you Ode to the Haggis by Robert Burns. I'll recite one stanza and then I'll give a brief synopsis and translation of the very incomprehensible words. Ode to a Haggis. There, fire, honest, saucy face, great chieftain o' the puddle race. Apunem yita your place. Pinch, tribe, o firm. Weel are ye worthy o a grace as long as my arm. Which is to say, all hail, king of sausages. You are supreme amongst the sausage world, better than pork sausage or beef sausage or tripe. And so you're worthy of a grace as long as my arm. The groaning trencher, there ye fill your hardies like a distant hill. Your pen would set to mind a mill in time o' need, while through your pores the dews distill like amber bead. So there the trencher, the planter is laden with your coils of sausage. Your pin would help to mend a mill in time of need, and through the infusion of whiskey, beans, and amber beads. His knife, see rustic labour dight, and cutting up with ready snipe, gushing their, rushing, gushing their trenches like ony ditch, and then, oh, what a glorious sight, warm, reeking, rich. So his knife, the rustic labourer takes up, and this is actually a sailing do, which all self-respecting Scotsmen, Kilkenny Scotsmen, would have tucked into their knee-high stocking on the right-hand side for easy accessibility. It's called a sailing do, and this is a genuine Scottish sailing do. He mentions the rustic labourer. Robert Burns was a ploughman at the age of 14, and that's why he was called the ploughman's bard. He was a ploughman before he was a tax collector, and a exciseman, and later a literary figure. So he sort of eulogized the rustic labourer, and you can see this later on in the poem as well. So he takes his knife and he cuts it up with a swift cutting, trenching it so that the entrails are spilling out and they're warm, aromatic, and rich tasting. Then, horn for horn, they stretch and strive. Deal tap the hindmost, on they dive, till their wheel-swelled kites alive are bent like drums. The odd wee man makes like to rive, the thankful hums. Now, Burns suppers were totally male affairs. There wouldn't be any ladies present. And here they're using horn spoons to get an ample helping of the haggis. Horn spoons were used in Scotland before they had stainless steel. And so these horn spoons were beautiful. They were a sort of a translucent gold colour with veining, clean veining. And they came from ram's horns. And also this Ian Lou would have had a horn handle originally. So here they are, these men, stretching and striving and competing with one another to get more and more of the haggis. The second line, where he says, Deal tak the hindmost, it means sort of, well, he who hesitates is lost. And to the devil with the fellow who's too slow to get his helping of haggis. And then they ate more and more of the haggis, and their tummies were bent like drums. And then the odd lead man, mace like to arrive, means the host, the master of ceremonies, who was the most likely to explode from an excess of haggis, contentedly hums his thanks. Is there any that our his French ragout, or olio that would staw a sou, or fricassee that would mak her stew with perfect skinner, looks doon with sneering scorn you on thick a dinner? Well, there are those who prefer their French ragout, or their Italian olio stew, or their French fricassees. And these are the people who look down disdainfully and scornfully on the haggis dinner. Poor devil. See him, or his trash, as feckless as a withered rash. His spindle shaft a geed whiplash, his knee a nut. Through bloody field, oh flood to dash. Oh, how unfit. You see, he's referring to the people who prefer their French ragouts or their Italian olio stews or their continental fare. And he says, look at them. They're like reeds. They're thin as reeds. Their spines are so narrow and weak and fragile. And how unfit they are to rush into the field of battle or the surging rivers of Scotland. But mark the rustic, haggis fed, the trembling earth resounds his tread. Clapping his wally fist a blade, he'll mak it whistle, and legs and arms and heads will sned like taps o' thistle. Well, here we have the haggis-fed rustic. The very earth trembles as he walks across the fields. You stick a blade in his hand, in his sturdy fist, and he'll make it whistle, and he'll cut off legs and arms and heads like tops of thistles. And of course the thistle was the emblem of Scotland. Ye powers, wha mak mankind your care, and dish them out their bill of fare. All Scotland wants nae skinking ware that jumps in luggies. But if ye wish her grateful prayer, gie her a haggis. So the powers that be, all powers that be, who take care of mankind and offer mankind his menu for living. Scotland doesn't want any rubbishy food, any non-nutritious food that jobs in luggies, that slops around in little wooden bowls. Juggies were little wooden bowls. So, if you want the Scots people's grateful prayer, give them haggis. And now I turn to
That was fantastic. Thank you all for coming. That's all we have time for. Thank you, Margaret. Fantastic. The piping in tune was a song called "A Man's a Man for All That." It was from a Burns poem called "Is There for Honest Poverty?" It's an expression of egalitarianism. It's about the universality of people. That was a quaint ideal in 18th century Scotland, and not an issue anymore in enlightened 2020 when we all enjoy exactly the same opportunities and rights. But with that, let's pipe her out of here. Don't worry, you will see the haggis again. This seems a good time to note the 3 topics that refined people don't broach in polite company. Politics, religion, sex. We will get to all 3 in this program. What were Robert Burns' politics? A little vague, but his works clearly demonstrate that he leaned toward the democratic, the small d. What was his religion? That too was a little vague, but he certainly leaned against his Calvinistic upbringing. And then there's the 3rd topic. But first, Jacqueline with some dance tunes. annoying that nobody danced, but we'll continue on anyway. I really brought up religion and politics to explain this bonnet, and particularly the white cockade on it, though many of you know the story, I'm sure. There isn't any really good short way to tell it, but I'll try. Made easier by the fact that religion and politics were inextricable in the 17th and 18th century, so we can knock them off together. In 1688, Parliament kicked the Catholic King James II of England and Ireland, who was also King James VII of Scotland, same guy, off the throne in order to replace him with the Dutch Protestants William and Mary. Mary was James's daughter. James also had a son named Charles Stuart, and those who wanted him to be the king came to be known as Jacobites. Charles's son came to be called Bonnie Prince Charlie. And when he came to Scotland in 1745 to gather and unite the Highland clans and foment a rebellion, reportedly he picked a white rose, a wild white a wild right a wild white rose and stuck it in his hat. And the white cockade became a symbol of rebellion. Burns was still some years away from being born. He had nothing to do with any of this. But he did write a song called The White Cockade. And that song was from the viewpoint of a woman whose love was a Jacobite rebel/fighter. And the chorus of that is, oh, he's a ranting, raving lad. He is a brisk and a bonny lad. Betide what may, I will be wed and follow the boy with the white cockade. And now seems like a good time for some Celtic harp. And before you do that, Joy, the first song you're going to play is the Sky Boat song, right?
Correct.
Okay. That song, although not written until the 19th century, is supposed to sort of be about Bonnie Prince Charlie going over the water. Fair to say? And then the next part of your duet is a song called Wild Mountain Time. One of my favorite songs. You might know it by the title Wild Mountain Time. It's also sometimes called Purple Heather. It's also sometimes called Bloomin' Heather. It's also sometimes called something like Will You Go With Me Lassie or something like that. But we're not going to sing it anyway, so it doesn't matter. But it's a fantastic song, and I'm looking forward to this. Joy, go ahead. both those songs have been recorded a million times. Notably, Wild Mountain Time has been recorded by artists as disparate as Rod Stewart and the Byrds. I believe it was on the Byrds' first album. I don't think anybody does it as well as Joy and Domenico. Now, Robert Burns did not write or adapt Loch Lomond, but we can't omit it from a program that's got anything remotely to do with Scotland. Loch Lomond is the largest inland stretch of water in Great Britain, and I've mentioned this before and will again, even though some writers have debunked this notion. But at least some people have put forward the theory that the reference in the lyrics to Loch Lomond to the low road refers to the Celtic belief that when somebody dies away from their homeland, the fairies provide a route for their soul to return home. And that route is called the low road. Accept it or not, up to you. But what is not up to you is now you will be singing Loch Lomond. Here we go. Robert Burns was the oldest of what turned out to be 7 kids. The Burnses, as Margaret said earlier, were indeed farmers. And that life in the 18th century was not easy anywhere. And it certainly was not easy in beautiful but harsh and unforgiving landscape and climate of Scotland. But Burns's father provided his male kids, at least, with a grounding of some good education, which began to supply Robert with an ability to write poetry and to write, collect, and adapt many folk songs, the most famous of which is Auld Lang Syne, which we will get to. But before that, we have Sarah Ford Marcio and Thomas Marcio with a small pipes and guitar duet. Sarah, I don't know if you want to explain the small pipes a little bit. Can you?
Sure. These are Scottish small pipes. They're bellows blown, so I won't be blowing into them like the set I was playing earlier. Similar setup, same fingering, so they make a wonderful companion instrument for a Highland piper. They work well indoors and great with other instruments, which is always. Thomas and I love to play tunes together, so we thought we'd start with a Robert Burns tune, My Love, She's But a Lassie Yet, which is a hornpipe, and then we'll go into a couple jigs and maybe a more contemporary hornpipe after that.
Fantastic, thank you. Now, if any country has a national poet, it's Scotland, and that poet is Robert Burns. We don't really have celebrations here in the United States for a national poet. Who would it be? Walt Whitman, Emily Dickinson, Allen Ginsberg. I'd probably vote for Ginsberg. But anyway, in Britain, even in Britain, we've got Shakespeare, of course, in England. In Wales, it would probably be Dylan Thomas. Ireland has Yeats. Northern Ireland, Seamus Heaney, or maybe Van Morrison. Robert Burns was a character. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Lord Byron, whose birthday was Wednesday, wrote admiringly about Burns. What a mind, tenderness and roughness, delicacy and coarseness, sentiment and sensuality, soaring and groveling, dirt and deity, all mixed up in that one compound of inspired clay. Burns was married to Jean Armour, with whom he had 2 sets of twins. He stayed married almost 8 years until his death. Burns had at least 12 kids. Jean had 9 of them. And the last one was born on the day of his funeral. One of his sweetest songs is one that I trot out every year, and it's called, and you probably know this one, My Love is Like a Red, Red Rose. Oh, my love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. Oh, my love is like the melody that's sweetly played in tune. So fair art thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I, and I will love thee still, my dear, till the seas gang dry. Till the seas gang dry, my dear, and the rocks melt with the sun. I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands of life shall run. And fare thee weel, my only love, and fare thee weel a while. And I will come again, my love, though it were 10,000 mile. And that's a great poem. But there's a couplet from another poem he wrote called Farewell to Nancy, sometimes called A Fond Kiss, which is really a compression of that sentiment in 2 lines. But to see her was to love her, love but her, and love forever. Burns liked those lines so much he used them twice. He used them again, in essence, in another poem called Saw Ya Bonnie Leslie. And now, Jacqueline, are you ready to fire up another one about love? Kind of holding
John
some aside.
Anderson, My Joe.
Yeah.
And it's a love that lasted a marriage that lasted the whole life, from the beginning to the end.
Well, we did politics and religion, so it seems like time for sex. Within a few years of Burns's death, there was published a book called The Merry Muses of Caledonia. Don't even tell me you haven't heard of this. This book contains songs and poems that Burns wrote or collected, and these works deal often in the clearest terms with various aspects of what was known as Omagandi. Now, we're all going to say this together once, and then none of us is ever going to say it again. Are you ready? Omagandi. Are you ready? Omagandi. This aspect of Burns's life and work is often underplayed in Burns Night celebrations, but I anticipated a sophisticated, worldly audience here tonight, and it is clear, even from this distance, that I got it. So I've selected a few works from the Merry Muses of Caledonia suitable for an audience of your level of enlightenment. The first one is called Or Jans Brak Yestreen. Twa neighbor wives sat in the sun, a-twining at their rock. Okay. Let's try one called How Can I Keep My... And there is one here called 9. Maybe a song then. Don, are you ready up there?
I'm ready.
Burns's interest in lasses was one-dimensional, so I would have you consider his poem, The Rights of Women, the first stanza of which goes like this. Well, it actually goes exactly like this. While Europe's eye is fixed on mighty things, the fate of empires and the fall of kings, while quacks of state must each produce his plan, and even children lisp the rights of man. Amid this mighty fuss, just let me mention, the rights of women merit some attention. So apparently they had quacks of state even in the 18th century. And with that, Jacqueline, I think you're going to play a tune?
A man's a man for all that, but we'll rename it tonight, A Woman's a Woman for All That, which Burns would have supported in his day. And his song is just beautiful words about how we are to be proud of who we are. Everybody is to be proud of who they are.
Burns wrote in Scots, Lowland Scots, not Scottish Gaelic. And he also wrote in English, and he often in the same work would write in combination. Some of his work is not easy to read, but one we must do today is in honor not only of his birthday today, but the fact that today is New Year's Day, Lunar New Year, Chinese New Year's, the year of the rat, more specifically the metal rat, sometimes called the year of the mouse. And he wrote, as many will recognize, a poem called To a Mouse. Now, this was originally supposed to have been read by someone who was unable to make it tonight as a result of the power outage. So I truly do this time look for any volunteers in the audience who might like to read To a Mouse. Seeing none, I will do it, which sincerely I had not planned to do, because I wanted you to hear somebody who really knew how to read poetry up here. And we'll take a shot at it. We, sleeked, cowering, timorous beastie, oh, what a panic's in thy breastie. Thou need not start away so hasty, with bicker and brattle. I would be laith to rin and chase thee, with murder and paddle. Then he goes into English. I'm truly sorry man's dominion has broken nature's social union and justifies that ill opinion which makes thee startle at me, thy poor earth-born companion and fellow mortal. But mousie, thou art know thy lane, in proving foresight may be vain. The best laid schemes of mice and men gang after glee, and layest naught but grief and pain for promised joy. Now, Burns apparently was really inspired to that at, as Margaret told us earlier, at the plow. He was actually plowing and he turned up the nest of a mouse in the field and felt bad about it and wrote this poem that connected himself as a representative of humanity with nature, the mouse whose nest he had destroyed. He also wrote another one about destroying something with his plow, one regarding a mountain daisy. But it seems that we should jump from a mouse to a louse. He wrote a poem called To a Louse on Seeing One on a Lady's Bonnet at Church. This guy was always going. He was never resting. As you know, this building is a church. It was a church earlier this evening, I think, unless it was affected by the... It was. It was, till the power went off, Saturday night, Sunday morning. And I love the opening line, and I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to ask you to repeat it after me with gusto. And by the way, we're going to do that until we achieve gusto. So you might want to get it the first go-round. Ha! Where you going, you crawling furly? You ready? Does everybody have it? Yes. Ha! No, wait a minute. I'm just going to tell you what it was. Ha! Where you gone, you crawling furly? Ready? Ha! Where you going, you crawling furly? It's pretty good. Pretty good. Better than the singing. Ha! Where you going, you crawling furly? Your impudence protects you sairly. I cannot say, but you struck rarely, or gauze and lace. Though faith, I fear you dine but sparely on sick a place. I'm not going to read the whole thing. That's the beginning of To a Louse, but I can't omit the first two lines of the second stanza. O wad some power the gifty gie us, to see ourselves as ither see us. Probably heard that one before. Save me here, Jack. Are you ready?
Well, these are reminding me of another funny Burns poem, The Cooper of Cuddy.
Also in the Merry Muses of Caledonia.
And it's a story for adults of a woman who is having her way with the Cooper in, I guess, their boudoir, but not the Cooper's boudoir. And the woman's husband comes home. And so the song, we'll hide the Cooper behind the door, and the door will hide the Cooper behind the door and cover him over with mono, which I forget what that means, but I'm going to remember
best.
Jean Redpath as I play this. You'll just have to imagine the story. And then I'm going to play not a Burns, but an 18th century piece, Through the Wood Laddie, which probably has a death count murder ballad connected to it, but I'm not sure if it does. But for me, it has more of an anthem sound, which I think we, right now in this day and age, can use all the anthems we can get.
Fair enough. Almost a month ago on Hogmanay, you might have sung Old Lang Syne. Did you sing the proper lyrics? You will tonight. But before we do, this will be the 4th year we've tried this, and I'm hopeful. We'll have a little warm-up here in a few moments, but I wanted to tell you, did you know that Old Lang Syne is the 3rd most frequently sung song sung in English, even though a number of the words are not English. The other 2 could appropriately be sung tonight. Does anybody know what they are? Happy Birthday to You is the first one, and For He's a Jolly Good Fellow. And I tried a joke at this point last year, and I'm not going to repeat it. But happy birthday to Robert Burns. Now, he, as I said earlier, collected some lyrics. He wrote others. And just to give a little bit of explanation for some of the phrases that you'll encounter in the lyrics of this song, the title, I think everybody knows, Old Lang Syne, means essentially old, long since, long ago, good old days. And a couple of the phrases in there. First one's key. This is going to be the key to the whole success of this thing. Where you are perhaps used to saying dear. It's not in there. It's Joe. Joe. Joy means dear, basically, but joy, dear. Joe. So when you sing it, don't say dear, say Joe. Because we're staying here until everybody says Joe. There is another phrase in there, you'll be your pint stoop. That just means you'll buy your pint tankard. And then there's another line in there, we twa hae run about the braes and pooed the gowans fine. And that just means, in essence, we too have run around on the slopes and picked the daisies fine. Gowans means daisies. So, is everybody ready for this? Now I think, and this was pointed out to me last year, I think, that the thing to do when you're singing this song is to link your arms in the front and hold hands. I'm not seeing people do it, but I'm telling you, it's good. It's a good thing to do it. We need this, and it's a good thing to do it. If you can, if you physically can. I don't want anybody to get hurt doing it, but if you can do it, it would be good. All right, it's going to be Old Lang Syne, and Jacqueline's going to play it through. There's a couple of different tunes to this, right, Jacqueline?
We're actually going to sing the modern version of the song, not the version that Burns would have put to it, because I think more of us will know it tonight.
Yeah.
Do you? Sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
Do you also do that? When I've been at Scottish dances, at the very end of Old Lang Syne,
they're not going to dance. I'm telling you right now, they barely sing. They're not going to dance.
Well, at Scottish dances, at the end of Old Lang Syne, they go hip hip hooray 3 times. We can
Sounds
try
easy.
that too. We'll try that.
Sounds doable.
Hip hip hooray, hip hip hooray. Anyway,
Sounds doable.
there it is.
Let's try it. Thanks, Jack. yet for old lang syne. For old lang syne, my Joe, for old lang syne. We'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. We's why run about the grace and put the gowans fine. But we wandered many a weary fit, saying old lang syne. For old lang syne, my Joe, for old lang syne. We'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. We twice paddled in the burnt frame morning sun till dawn, but seas between us braided o'er, saying old lang syne. For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne. We'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. And there's a hand I trust thee fair, and kiss the hand of mine. And we'll take a right good weary walk for old lang syne. For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne. We'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. Hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! Now, you know what I thought would be moving it? How many people, by the way, right at the end of that, had in their heads a little kid saying, "Teacher says, whenever a bell rings, a teacher." All right. I think we should do the first stanza and the chorus again, but sitting down. I wish we could dim the lights a little, but probably not going to happen. And if we could play it really softly, Jacqueline, what do you think? That might be good. Might be moving. Are you willing to do that? Just the one. And sing it really softly. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Verse. Everybody ready for that? Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and old lang syne? For old lang syne, my Joe, for old lang syne. We'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. So, as we've noted, the first Burns night commemorated his death. Probably then the celebrants realized that although Burns was gone at the age of 37, he wasn't really gone. He would never be. Did he expire of rheumatic fever or of brucellosis? Was his death hastened by his doctors ordering him to bathe in icy seawater? Or was his death complicated, his life complicated by a tooth extraction gone bad? Does it matter? Among Burns's last words were those to his physician as he approached Burns's deathbed. Alas, what has brought you here? I am but a poor crow and not worth plucking. And to a fellow member of the Royal Dumfries Volunteers crying at Burns's bedside, John, don't let the awkward squad fire over me. In other words, don't let inept and malicious critics swoop in like vultures and belittle my work and gossip about my life. To the extent any awkward squad has ever fired over Burns, they missed and have failed. His words have only found higher and higher praise. He was born 261 years ago, today, and he died almost 224 years ago. Except he didn't. The last reading is My Heart's in the Highlands, and then we will go right into the song Highland Cathedral. This song has been proposed as the official Scottish national anthem, and it naturally has ancient and a storied Scottish history. It was written in Germany by two German guys in 1982. After Highland Cathedral, Sarah and Don will come downstairs. Sarah will pipe us over to Jenkins Hall through the appropriately Scottish weather, which we have tonight. They will go first, followed by Jacqueline and Joy, Margaret, and me. And we'll, of course, invite you to immediately follow us to the haggis, or at least the shortbread. And once again, I would thank you on behalf of everybody who participated tonight for your coming out tonight on this raucous weather night and the uncertainty of the power outage. And hope you, I know you enjoyed the music. I hope you enjoyed some of the rest of it. Thanks for coming. Burns's poem, My Heart's in the Highlands. Farewell to the Highlands, farewell to the North, the birthplace of valor, the country of worth. Wherever I wander, wherever I rove, the hills of the Highlands forever I love. My heart's in the Highlands, my heart is not here. My heart's in the Highlands, chasing the deer, chasing the wild deer and following the roe. My heart's in the Highlands wherever I go. Farewell to the mountains, high covered with snow. Farewell to the straths and green valleys below. Farewell to the forests and wild hanging woods. Farewell to the torrents and loud pouring